Imagine living in a beautiful palace, wearing silk robes and eating fine food, but knowing you might be killed and buried with the king when he dies. For thousands of women throughout history, this terrifying life was real. They were concubines, not official wives, but women forced to live with powerful men. We often hear stories of women kidnapped and sold into this life. That definitely happened. But here's the shocking part. Sometimes, poor families chose to send their daughters to become concubines. Why? It was a desperate gamble. A family struggling to feed everyone might offer their daughter to the local ruler. If chosen, she might escape poverty and find safety, fancy clothes and good food inside the palace walls. But she also faced a dangerous, lonely life trapped inside. This is the hidden world of the ancient concubine, a story far bigger than just one place or time. Think concubines were only in ancient China. Think again. Powerful men, kings, emperors, chiefs, all over the world kept concubines alongside their wives. From the dusty cities of Mesopotamia to the grand halls of Rome and the vast kingdoms of Africa, this practice was everywhere. These women weren't just for romance. They were symbols of a man's power, producers of children, and tools for making political deals. While Chinese emperors famously kept thousands locked away, this shadow system existed across continents. The story starts incredibly early. Over 5,000 years ago, in places like Mesopotamia and Babylonia, rich and powerful men had concubines. Many were slaves or captured in wars. The man's first wife stayed the most important woman in the house, but society had strange rules. Some women became powerful priestesses who never married. Men would visit them like they visited prostitutes. And this wasn't just allowed. It was seen as a religious duty, even for married men. A clear double standard. The Bible mentions concubines too. The Israelites often had them alongside their wives. How could you tell a wife from a concubine? Wives brought a dowry, money or property from their family. Concubines brought nothing. King Solomon was the most famous, with 700 wives and 300 concubines. While Christianity today forbids this, some ancient writers believed God allowed it after the Great Flood to help repopulate the earth. In Judaism, concubines were called pilagesh, meaning a mistress living in the house. The big difference. Wives had a formal marriage contract and ceremony. Concubines did not. Important Jewish teachers like Maimonides even said only kings could have concubines. Regular men were told to have only one wife and no other partners. Islam also allowed concubinage under strict rules. The Quran says a man can marry up to 4 wives, but only if he treats them all perfectly equally. If he knew he couldn't be that fair, he was told to marry just one woman, or be with his slave women, who were concubines. Where did these concubines come from? Mostly non-Muslim women captured in war, or, before Islam, women bought as slaves. The Prophet Muhammad himself had several wives, 15 in total, but only 11 at once, and at least 4 concubines, all slaves. Stories say he visited all 11 wives in a single night, showing the immense pressure on these women. Ancient Greece and Rome had their own systems. In Athens, keeping a slave concubine was common. The law was brutal. A man could legally kill another man caught with his concubine. Why? Because her children could never be free citizens. Romans were more organized. Being called a concubina wasn't even an insult. You might see it written on a tombstone. It was a long-term, recognized relationship with a woman the man couldn't legally marry, usually because she was from a lower class. Romans also had concubinus, young male slaves used for sex by their masters. This wasn't seen as gay, as long as the master was in charge, but it was supposed to be less important than having a wife and family. Now, step inside the terrifying world of the Chinese emperor's harem, a place of strict ranks and deadly competition. A concubine's life depended completely on the emperor's changing moods. One might live like royalty, treated almost like a wife. Another might be ignored or abused like a servant. The biggest chance for a better life. Having a son. This could raise her status and bring comforts, but her child would always be less important than the empress's children. Everything, her food, her rooms, even her safety, relied on keeping the emperor's attention. Look at Consort Wu, Emperor Xuanzong's favourite. Famous for her beauty, she climbed to the top rank. When the empress died in 724 CE, everyone in the palace treated Wu as if she was the new empress. Her power came only from his favour, but many concubines suffered terribly. If she didn't have children, her life often became miserable and lonely. By the time of China's Qing dynasty, a shocking 20,000 concubines were locked inside the Forbidden City. Guarding them, thousands of eunuchs, men who had been castrated. Why? To make absolutely sure that only the emperor could father children with these women. Inside this golden prison, the women fought constantly. The ranking system was rigid and deadly serious. Concubines schemed and plotted against each other every day, desperate to move up. Why? For the tiny chance to spend just one night with the emperor, their only hope to have a child and change their fate. This constant jealousy and backstabbing made life far from peaceful, and they were completely cut off from the world. No visits from family, no sending letters, not even receiving letters. If a concubine got sick, a doctor couldn't come see her. Her symptoms were shouted over the palace walls to a doctor outside. Medicine was sent back in. She suffered, and often died, completely alone. Could a concubine ever escape? Only in cruel ways. Just like an emperor might get a woman as a gift, he could give one of his concubines away to a foreign ruler. This wasn't freedom, it was just trading one prison for another. A small light of hope appeared during China's Ming dynasty. Some concubines were allowed to leave after serving for many years. Emperor Hongwu set a minimum time of 5 years in 1389. Women who survived and reached retirement could leave with a pension. They were free to marry ordinary men and have families. Some older concubines, no longer useful to the palace, stayed behind to work as maids or became nuns. The darkest truth? Concubines were seen as property. Even after death, dig up ancient tombs of nobles, and you often find one man buried with several women around the same age. Clear proof of concubinage. Inside the palace, many met horrible ends, murdered by the palace eunuchs, or so desperate they killed themselves by hanging or swallowing poison. In the early Ming dynasty, it was even worse. Concubines were sometimes burned alive and buried near the dead emperor. In the worst cases, they were buried alive, forced to stand upright in the tomb, waiting forever to serve their master in the afterlife. Meet the very last concubine of China, Li Yuqin. She was only 15 years old in 1943 when she was taken. The Emperor Pu Yi was a puppet ruler. His real wife was destroyed by opium. One concubine had divorced him. Another had died mysteriously. His handlers decided he needed a new one. They showed Pu Yi photos of local schoolgirls. He pointed to Li Yuqin. Soldiers took her from her home. They lied, telling her she was going to the palace to study. The young girl believed them. "I even took my school bag," she said later. "I was very innocent then, thinking I could run away if I didn't like it. In fact, it was absolutely impossible to escape. The palace wasn't a school, it was a prison." Years later, Li Yuqin felt some pity for Pu Yi. He was released from prison in 1959, a broken man. He worked a simple job in a garden until he died of cancer in 1967, with no children. Pu Yi had many sides, Li said. He was nervous, distrustful, easily angered, but as a human being he also suffered a lot of pain and sadness, much heavier than what ordinary people feel. Her words mark the end of an ancient, brutal system. Li Yuqin was the final concubine of China's last emperor. In ancient Africa, concubinage was complex, more than just taking women by force. Across the huge continent, in many different kingdoms and societies, concubines were part of life. It meant a woman living with a man without a full marriage ceremony, often alongside his other wives. Why did it happen? One major reason was making peace and alliances. Wise kings and chiefs used concubines like peace treaties. Taking a woman from another tribe or a rival group was a powerful act. She became a living symbol of the new alliance, helping to stop fights or build friendships between different peoples. Economic survival was another huge factor. In farming societies, having more people meant more workers. A concubine and any children she had added more hands to grow food, tend animals, make crafts or run the household. This made the family or the chief's household stronger and richer. Leaders also used concubinage to gain power and control. By bringing women from different groups into his household, a ruler created important connections. The children born from these relationships could grow up to hold important positions, loyal to their father and helping him rule more effectively. What was life like? Concubines were always ranked below official wives. They had fewer rights, less status, and often lived with fewer comforts. This mirrored the big differences in society between men and women, rich and poor, and different ethnic groups. When women from different backgrounds became concubines, they brought their own languages, traditions, foods, and beliefs. Slowly over time, these different ways of life mixed together, creating the rich and diverse cultures of Africa. Children born to concubines faced a tough situation. Where did they belong? Were they part of the father's main family? Sometimes they were accepted. Often they faced prejudice, had fewer inheritance rights, and struggled to find their place, causing tension for generations.